If you guys follow politics as closely as I do, then you definitely know the right-wing media ecosystem loves to spread themselves some disinformation. But in a rare win from the people over at Fox and Friends, they actually provided the necessary context to better understand one of the main lies that is going around right now. But if you end up liking this video, please do remember to hit that subscribe button, as I am trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year and would very much appreciate your support. Now, one of the main targets of these disinformation campaigns is immigrants. Oftentimes, they don't even distinguish between legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants. People over at Fox News love to rile up their viewers about people that weren't born in this country and oftentimes have a different shade of skin than I do. So if you've been paying attention over the last week or two, you may have heard a claim going around that sounds a little bit like this.
Well, a disturbing development on the border crisis. Wait until you hear this. The Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement confirms that more than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been caught at the border and then released into the United States. The letter here tells the tale.
So Fox News would have you believe that we are detaining some people at the border, we figure out that they've been convicted of murder, and then we just turn around and let them into the country anyways. And they don't explicitly come out and say it, but the implication here is that this is only happening because Biden-Harris are in office. And if you are Donald Trump, you definitely want to blame this on the Biden and Harris administration. So your claim might sound a little bit like this.
But it was so bad, never done, but under Kamala Harris, more than 13,099 convicted murderers. So these are people that have gone through the system. They're convicted. They're in jails for life. Some are getting the death sentence. But instead of that, they've crossed our border. They've been taken out by their countries and set free into the United States of America.
So obviously, Donald Trump wants to blame this problem on the Biden and Harris administration. This is just another attempt to dehumanize these people, as he tends to do. And he definitely does not distinguish between legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants. He just puts them all into one basket and dehumanizes all of them. And then you have people like Maria Bartiromo, who's not going to come out and explicitly say that this is the Biden and Harris administration's fault. Instead, she'll say something that sounds a little bit like this.
About what we know is that 13,000 people were released into the country and they were convicted of murder. Okay, she says this data goes back 4 decades and that her administration has nothing to do with it. I have a hard time believing that a wide open border that has invited 10 million illegals into America in the last 4 years on her watch, on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch, has nothing to do with this administration. I'm sorry.
So obviously she did not come out and say that this is 100% Kamala Harris's fault, but she did allude to some other data that said maybe these numbers are stretching back for a number of years, but she just goes along and says, I don't want to believe that anyway, and continues on with her narrative. So, and then you've got people over at Fox and Friends that, like I said, had a rare win when they provided some additional context to these numbers. So let's go ahead and check out what they said.
We've been talking about those numbers for a while. The former president was on Truth Social over the weekend and made speeches as well. And he referred to how there were like 13 or 14,000 convicted murderers in the country. And that got some pushback from the Department of Homeland Security in the last 24 hours. But we want to tell you a little about these non-detained, non-citizen convicted criminals. These are people who were convicted of homicide, who are or were currently are in the United States.
So I just want to pause it right there to say that the numbers that they have on their screen are correct. They came from Immigrations and Custom Enforcement just, this past week or so. So Steve Doocy is actually going to provide a little bit more context to these numbers, so let's go ahead and take a listen.
As you can see right there, according to ICE, the number is 13,000. convicted of homicide, 15,000 convicted of sexual assault. The total illegal criminals in the United States is at 425,000.
Convicted of crimes.
Right, exactly. So here, when I saw that number, I thought, how is that possible? Well, as it turns out, a lot of the people have been in the country for decades. And a lot of the people who were convicted of murder committed it here in the United States. The problem is, because they're still in the United States, is a lot of them are from countries where it's like, okay, person is from Russia, we're going to send him back to Russia. Oh, Russia won't take him. They're stuck here. And so that's why that is such a big, jaw-dropping number.
So it took over decades. And the numbers are stunning, but it happened over decades. So the DHS wanted to qualify it after they gave Congressman Gonzalez this information on Friday. So the data in the letter is being misinterpreted. The data goes back decades. It includes individuals who entered the country over the past 40 years, the vast majority whose custody determination was made long before Biden took over. It also
So I just want to say that it is not lost on me that the title of this graphic says DHS attempts to downplay criminal migrant crisis. So even though they are providing additional context for these numbers, they are still trying to downplay it in a very subtle way by including those words in their graphic. So remember when we started this segment, the whole idea was that we were detaining some people at the southern border. We would figure out that they have been convicted of murder elsewhere. And then instead of rejecting them from the country, we would just let them into the country so they can terrorize Americans. And it was implied that this was only happening because the Biden administration was letting it happen. But as Steve Doocy provided, we now know that there are some key details that people need to know to better understand these numbers. One of the main ones was that many of these people committed crimes while they were in the United States. So many of them are locked up in either federal prison or state prison. He also mentioned that some of these people are from countries like Russia or other countries that don't have good relationships with the United States. So, of course, they are not going to take their criminal citizens back. They're just not going to do it. That's why these numbers can seem so inflated. And then the most important point that he brought up was that this data does stretch back at least 40 years. So the whole idea that this is only happening because Biden and Harris are allowing it to happen is just hogwash. Many of these people were coming in well before Biden got into office, and that includes under the Trump administration. So as we can see, when we provide the additional context and we give people a clearer vision of what exactly is going on, things start to make a little bit more sense and maybe, for the Fox News folks, a bit less scary. And I think it's important that we, give a shout out to Fox when they do something right. Obviously, I wish that these contextualizations would be passed on to the primetime slots. I'm not super confident that that is going to happen, but we should commend them when we see them doing the right thing. Obviously, they're probably back to telling other lies, but we should call it out when we see it. And, we just need to let people know that it is so important that we provide the necessary context when we have numbers like this. Otherwise, you have people walking around with a vision of reality that really doesn't comport with reality. And that causes problems in society, as we can see. When people think that the Kamala Biden, they're letting in thousands upon thousands of criminals into this country, people have a skewed understanding of what is actually going on. So I give a hat tip to the people over at Fox and Friends. They did this one right, so I will give you that hat tip. I do want to shout out Decoding Fox News. She was the one who pointed this clip out, so thank you for that. But I think that's it for this one. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to hit that like button and subscribe. Trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year and would very much appreciate your support. If you want to learn how Donald Trump spins up these false realities for MAGA supporters, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.